if you look at the top leaders in my life, they've been introverted. But the unlikely leader for me that I'm really focused on is almost if you go back to the 18 and 20-year-olds, that if you look at giving people equity in life and the chance to be a real leader, you look at startups, which you're in and you're talking about. Some of the people who are in there, they might not have degrees. Yep. They might not have a good education. They might have a background which is very disadvantaged, but they are brilliant people. So the unlikely leader for me is my real passion. Before I die, I would love to be able to see equity increasing in terms of leadership.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. This episode is powered by J Ventures, a community-driven VC fund in Silicon Valley, in partnership with Leumi Tech, sponsored by Hippo Insurance, Upwest Labs, Turing, Hillel at Stanford, Leap, and in media partnership with CTech. I'm really excited to dive deep into the world of coaching in these next 20 minutes, and I'm joined by Colin Hunter, CEO and founder of PotentialSquared International. Colin is an author, mentor, coach, and founder of a business, PotentialSquared, that specializes in creating playgrounds to disrupt the way people are led. He lives with his family near London, but originally from Scotland, and still retains his love for the Scottish mountains and the outdoors. Colin and his team work with their clients to provide leaders and their teams the chance to, as he describes, sail their ship out of the harbor and test themselves in rougher seas. He is a practitioner, and his work and his book are based on personal experience and purposeful practice with his clients. Colin Hunter, welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. How are you?
Hey, I'm very good. Sun is shining. Yeah, we're heading out of spring towards summer. I'm good. I'm in a good place there.
I love it. Just like the weather is beautiful, we're going to talk about leadership today. And this show, I call it 20-Minute Leaders, but really, today we're going to talk about human-to-human leadership and what your work with PotentialSquared and what you're doing there. I think it's going to be really, really great. And I'm excited to learn about what you're doing over there, but also about your journey and how you see leadership from your lenses. And let's start with your ambition to be an actor and a dancer, because I love that and I have a personal ambition for that as well. Tell me a little bit about that.
So I grew up just wanting to be on the stage, and I realized I could act, but the dancing, I have a complete lack of rhythm. So I felt I couldn't do the combinations. So I left it, went off. And actually, what I do now with leadership and with training and development and other pieces allows me to be on the stage quite a bit of the time. So I've realized I'm a dad dancer, Michael, if you know that expression. So I've given up the dancing, but the acting, I can still
I love it.
Stage when I want to be. But yeah, it's an interesting. I think my career ended on the stage when I fell in love with my lead actress, who was about 4 years older than me. And I think I spent more time actually looking at her than remembering my lines in Jeanne d'Arc. So yeah, at the time. So
I love that. And so tell me now a little bit about your entrance to PotentialSquared and your leadership experience over there. PotentialSquared. What does that even mean? PotentialSquared. I love the name already. What does that mean to you?
So I think it comes to the fact that through all my life, I've had a bit of an imposter syndrome about myself. But it's been certain people in my life who have helped me to find my true potential. And interestingly enough, we had a business before we diverged from that old business, and we were trying to come up with a name. And over many glasses of wine, we were still struggling with a name. And my wife turned around to me and she said, "You need a bit more positivity in your life. In fact, positivity squared." And it just at that moment, we said PotentialSquared. And then one of my clients said, "But what about potential cubed?" And I said, "Well, I'm Scottish, so I'm going to go with the principle that I, under promise and over deliver. So therefore, PotentialSquared with a potential cubed possibility was where the name came up with." Yeah,
I love it. And this is potential for what?
It's potential for many different things. I mean, the target of what we do, we work with a number of different organizations, Accenture, Citi, the banks, the pharma companies, the large pharma companies. But I have a particular niche area that I love, which is the unlikely leader. Now, that can be an unlikely leader at the senior level who just doesn't have belief. It can be the introverted leader. I have a hypothesis that the introverted leader is the most unlikely leader because they always think it's about charisma. They think it's about, the tap dancing on the stage. And for me, there's if you look at the top leaders in my life, they've been introverted. But the unlikely leader for me that I'm really focused on is almost, if you go back to the 18 and 20-year-olds, that if you look at giving people equity in life and the chance to be a real leader, you look at startups, which you're in and you're talking about. Some of the people who are in there, they might not have degrees. Yep. They might not have a good education. They might have a background which is very disadvantaged, but they are brilliant people. So the unlikely leader for me is my real passion. Before I die, I would love to be able to see equity increasing in terms of leadership, and not just which university you went to or, which school you went to. I'd love to have that. That's my passion. Yeah.
I love it. And this term unlikely leader, what is, the difficulty or the challenge that is being presented in this world of unlikely leadership from your perspective?
I think the challenge for me is if you think about what you're doing and what you're trying to do, and I think about all the startups. We partner with IDEO, so I look at design thinking and, the thinking about new, fresh ideas. And then you think about our education system. Our education system is based on rote. We learn. My daughters are learning for exams next door, but they're learning by rote. They're learning to pass an exam rather than dealing with the human. So if you put the human at the center, then it's that ability to connect and build rapport and empathy with that person in there. Now, most people think that a skill of being able to get on with somebody is not worth anything. They think it's I'm technical, I can code is a real power. And those have power. But we all know that even if you can code and you can do technology, having a user-centric and empathic view on life is important. And we also know that scale-ups and startups do not happen unless you've got the right people with the right energy and the right passion in the right direction. So that's what the unlikely leader is about, finding those almost diamonds in the rough, honing them and sustaining them.
So I think, the discussion around leadership, and there's a bunch of examples, alongside leadership, but it's one of those things that are very fluffy. It's one of those words that, is being thrown around a lot, and it loses in some capacity a lot of its true meaning and the place where it actually gets translated. And one of the things that I really love through these conversations that I'm doing here is demystifying and actually grounding what it actually means. So when you're talking about this user-centric approach, this empathy, human to human leadership that is not just the ability to code and do that stuff, where does it actually, where from your experience, where do people actually encounter it, to sort of ground it a little bit?
Yeah. I think there's many different ways that people encounter it. They either encounter it through adversity. So, one of the people that I admire most is a guy called Randy Taylor. And he was an amazing person who in the divided US at the time was able to bring the North and the South together in terms of a view. And there was adversity, but he had this amazing ability to gain followers from people who agreed with him and followers from people who disagreed with him in there. And the principle in here is if we're going to change things, if we're going to create a groundswell of change, whether it's in products, buying, purchasing, whatever else, we need to get followers. And those followers are going to be influenced by other people. So leadership, the lead ship in my language, is about agitating for the future.
That is so cool. Lead ship.
Yeah. So you got to be an admiral. I mean, I'm reading this great book called Be More Pirate, Michael, and it's brilliant. But if you think about the pirates, they were the founders of equal opportunity, equal pay, all of those things. And they plundered and they did some other stuff. But a lot of the stuff that we're talking about now was started by the pirates. They had the first female captains in there. So, that's leadership. That's the analogy.
And now, a few hundred years later, and in the tech world and where we are with the unlikely leaders, I'm guessing that it's not as simple as going over a Zoom chat or a simple conversation, with a book. This is how to become a good leader. It's a little bit more complex and humane, and it requires a lot of leadership to, I guess, teach unlikely leadership. What does it actually entail? How do you actually do it?
Playground.
Yeah,
for me, I've always said, if you find the time when people are happiest, you'll find them in their passionate moments. And, I started an idea in my head that my happiest times were the playground, whether it's on a ski slope, whether it's in the formal playground when I was a kid at school, When I look at, going out on my bike and going out and, pushing myself. So there's a piece in here that you've got to find a way of creating a playground to firstly disrupt people. Yep, because you've got to push them, you've got to stretch them. And then secondly, it's about finding their passion and their unique piece. I had a colleague who's a brilliant guy, but his idea of fun on a playground was he used to do when he was working with retail companies. He would spend the night shift stocking the shelves in retail. And that was his playground to get new ideas about how to lead people. And he saw firsthand the problems that people had and worked in. And there's many other leaders who are in that space. Find a playground, get people to be their real self, to have fun, to stretch themselves. And then the analogy comes back to the boating again, which is you're getting people to almost sail their ship out of the harbor. Most leaders that we know in big corporates are sailing their boat around the harbor. They're not searching rougher waters. Most tech startups are searching rougher water. And how do we get that inbred almost into our leaders in businesses is my passion. Yeah.
And so as a young entrepreneur, I definitely don't want to go around my own waters. What are some things that I need to keep in mind as I go about my journey, whether it's my first startup and I'm leading myself and my team, or whether I'm leading 100 people, which hopefully one day will happen? What are things that I can even ask myself, or things that I can do to even begin working on this question? Because it sounds to me from the side that a lot of the difficulty here is even uncovering what you don't know or what your potential is.
Yeah. And that's why, the book that I'm written and it's being published in September is called Be More Wrong. But the principle in there is you got to be, I've screwed up more times in my career than I used to be able to care to admit, but actually I've found it's actually a good learning and people are still listening to me. Now, I've probably got my detractors, I've got my supporters, but be more wrong. So the principle for me goes back to James Clear and Atomic Habits. What are the systems that you need to create? So what's the system of followers? How do I engage my people, keep them engaged, connected? What's the system of energy? Now, I don't know about you, but in my time when I was younger, I probably burnt the candle at both ends and I burnt myself out. And there's a lot of people that I coach, particularly going through COVID over the last year, who they're burnt out. They are to the point of, they're struggling to motivate themselves, let alone anybody else. So fit to lead comes in there. So there's a system and energy, but also there's a storytelling piece to that energy, which is if you're heading towards somewhere and you know where you're going. So my passion, as I said, 18 to 20-year-olds equity, that's my true north that I'm heading towards. If I can create a playground to disrupt that, that's going to get me out of bed in the morning and it's going to keep me awake at night. And that's an energy. And then if I can indulge two other things, fresh ideas, experimentation. So how many experiments can you run a day and expect, in your world, 80% of them to fail, 20% to be successful? And I think that the biggest thing, which I come back to, is I wouldn't have got where I was today unless I had good mentors and good coaches in my life. And I have an expression, which is you can't tickle yourself. So you can't tickle yourself. So you got to get somebody to do it for you. So unless we've got an advisory board, 3 people, brilliant thinkers, who challenge me every day. So those would be the 4 areas: your followers, your energy, your fresh ideas, and then your learning and your advisory board in place. Those are the 4 you need to be successful. Yeah.
How do I even know if I need to be tickled? How do I know to look for this help? I personally am a huge believer in therapy. And I think that every single person on this planet, if they have the opportunity to do so, should seek a therapist, whether it's a psychologist or now I'm learning, maybe it's a coach.
Yeah. Well, I had a coach who was a brilliant guy. He's still a good friend, Jamie Smart, and he wrote a book called Clarity. And I paid the price of a small car, which I'm lucky to be able to afford, to go for 3 days. And at the time at the beginning of the session, he put a flip chart and he said, now write everything that's wrong with your life on the flip chart. And I wrote 3 pages of flip chart. By the end of the 3 days, he went back to this list and he said, from his work, and all he was doing was getting me to fall out my thinking. And it's a bit like therapy. It's about the cars. When we're standing in the middle of the road and all these cars are heading at us, it's difficult to think. But if we step out the road and just look and see what's important, we actually realize we have everything in our control. And that's what therapy is about. It's the ability to understand yourself and work in there. And therefore, for me, a coach and a mentor is somebody who gets you to move out of the road where the cars are just about to run you down and start to think, so what's the focus? What are you trying to do? And we can't do that ourselves, mostly because we're under pressure, we're under delivery targets, or the cash is running out, the burn rate's too high, and we're worrying about whether we're going to run out of, or we need more funding down the road. So that's the principle behind the falling out of things. So Jamie Smart was a big thing in my life. And nothing on that flip chart matters because I have control of my thoughts and therefore my feelings of what I do. But it's hard to deliver and practice that.
Is that measurable or quantifiable in any way? I think that especially in the tech ecosystem, when so many things are expected to be measurable and quantifiable, when you're talking about leadership, when you're talking about ideas and experimentation and self-fulfillment, that's not something you can put or give a number to, right? I'm guessing that's part of the challenge.
And I think this is where James Clear comes in here, because he has a quote, which I love, which he says, we don't rise to the level of our objectives, we fall to the level of our systems. And a bit like startups, measuring your systems is more important. So this is an infinite game. It's a life game that you've got to play. So if I just measure myself, I'm going to sprint for the next six months to get this done without thinking about my longer term goals. So the longer term goals are measurable. And I just do something very simple. This is visual, so it's a podcast, but I literally have a habit tracker and a systems checker for myself. So I can visually measure, have I done basic things like meditation? Have I done basic things like fitness? Have I eaten the right things? Have I coached? Have I engaged with my people? And the other thing is, do they truly understand me? So I do a regular 360 based on our leadership model. And that's my check-in. And I publish that to everybody. So everybody knows my strengths, weaknesses, everything. There's nothing to hide in there. That's the measurable bit of leadership that's out there. When people are seeing that I'm weak, for example, bizarrely, I do this for a living in coaching, then they know I'm working at it. Yeah. But I coach every day. It's just not high in my conscious state, but I'm doing that and putting it out there. And as soon as it's measured, as you say, people pick it up and they'll start to go, that's because you don't coach. Yeah.
And so, I think that one of the things that, or one of the biases that people have when it comes to coaching and leadership is you assume, well, it makes sense to get a coach, but really I need to be a C-level executive at a big corporation and I need to lead 500 people to even begin about seeking coaching help or even to constitute myself as a leader. I'm already seeing from your reaction that is complete nonsense, but please tell me a little bit more.
Yeah. You see, I'm not a big believer. I'm probably going to alienate quite a few people. I'm not a big believer in the International Coaching Federation because people get an accreditation to be a coach. And I've met a few of them and I've been coached by a few of them, just haven't really done it for me. So I'm a big believer that the people who can coach you in life are the people who either have experienced it and have gone past you and you're further on their career, or the people who are actually some of the people you're trying to do. So, my daughter has taught me more about dealing with my people at work. She used to come in and sit at my feet in the office, and she'd be the one kicking me under the table and going, "You're a bully." Yeah. Because I'd be doing something in the office, which was, in her view, and now that's a teaching moment when your daughter is calling you a bully. And I'm willing to admit it, I had a tear in my eye when I did it because I suddenly realized she was more perceptive than I was about the impact I was having on one of my team. That's powerful. Yeah. So everybody can coach. Yeah.
Unbelievable. And I think that's really, really remarkable. And the people that are getting the coaching.
Yeah.
How about that?
The people who are getting into coaching or working in coaching?
Well, the people that are that would need coaching. I'm thinking to myself, I want to get to a level where I can, look for a coach and feel good about it. How do I know when I'm ready? And how do I know? Because part of my bias says that, I need to lead 100 people so that I can justify wanting to get a coach. But really, I want somebody like you to help me sort out the things that will give me self-fulfillment and help me be a better team player and a better leader in whatever capacity I need to be in.
Yeah. So I'm Scottish by birth. And if you know anything about Scottish people, they're tight with their money. Yeah. So that's our background. That's, Presbyterian Scot. is in there. So I've always been looking for ways to do this in a cheaper way, because coaching is expensive, and it is expensive for the professional coaches. But what I've done is, in my business, is I've found that if I can give opportunities to people to be my coach, if I can give, and my advisory board, the 3 advisors on my advisory board have never been executive directors, non-executive directors of businesses before, but they've agreed to come on and have a go. And therefore, for 2 years, 2 of them they've had a playground to develop their skills about being a non-executive director, a coach, a mentor, and they've been getting feedback on a regular basis. Now, if you take that down to the lower level, just think about how many people run sports clubs at local level and who are coaches, who haven't been trained, but they transform lives. So my belief is this. There's one book by Michael Bungay-Stanier called The Coaching Habit. And I want you to be a bit more coach-like. And that's all we need to do in our life, is just every day be a bit more curious, coach-like, question, open with curiosity in there. And that's, when you're in a startup, you'll be doing the same thing. Your minimum viable product going out the door, you'll be empathically listening, being more curious to the customer to see whether you're hitting your targets and your metrics. Same with coaching. So everybody can do it. I think the myth of coaching is you need to sit down at a 90-degree angle for 90 minutes and be a professional coach. You can be more curious, and you can empower people and build people up by doing that. That would be my encouragement. Go find yourself somebody who's never been a coach and say, can you just be curious tickle me with questions for a while? Be careful how you say that, but that's all we're doing.
I love it. Colin, thank you so much. 20 minutes go by way, way too fast, but I have a few fun questions for you before we end, if you're ready.
Yeah, ready.
All right. So, one of your favorite subjects in middle school or high school?
That's an easy one for me because it was about the teacher. It's geography. So, and it's a passion for travel. That's a link. But he did a book on the Mezzogiorno in Italy, and Italy is one of my favorite countries. So that's an easy one. I had the passion for the country, passion for him as a teacher. Geography. Yeah. It's good.
I love it.
Easy one.
Somebody who you would consider a role model, or somebody that inspires you?
Yeah, no, for me, Randy Taylor. So we used to sit in a porch in North Carolina, and it was you can imagine a wooden porch, rocking chairs. And he used to be able to make me, as a 21-year-old, he must have been 55. He made me feel like I was the most important and the brightest person in the world. And he's passed away now, but he was the guy who was able to just bring the North and South together, was involved with Martin Luther King's march to Washington. He did so many things, but every time I think that I'm in the wrong, I think, what would he do? That's the person that inspires me, Randy Taylor.
Amazing. And what are 3 words that you would use to describe yourself? Or if I were to ask anybody that you're coaching, who is Colin Hunter?
So I'll give you one, is direct. But it's always partnered with refreshing. So I always talk about that I light fires under backsides and in bellies in equal measure. So that's 2 words. And I think the other one for me is, it's a difficult one, but I want to choose 3 words, but I pay it forward. So the principle is I give forward. So the disruptor in me wants to help other people. So heroes would be the one word I'd give you. That's creating heroes of the people I work with is the passion for me. Yeah.
Colin, thank you so much. This was so enjoyable. I have so many more questions than I came in with, and I think that just shows the inspiration that I'm gaining from this. So I really thank you for your time. Thank you for the work that you're doing with others. This idea of creating heroes, paying it forward. The unlikely leader. I think that's just really, really amazing. And I'm gonna ponder about that for quite some time after this episode. So thank you very much for that, and stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you.
You too, Michael. Thank you for having me on. Take care.